Jimmy, his eyes got big. Usually that tongue come about right here, now it's way out.
At 66 years old, Evan Magic Johnson sits upon the throne of basketball history. A king whose reign was defined not just by dazzling passes and glittering championships, but also by the shadows cast by rivals and adversaries. For every moment of glory, there were battles drenched in sweat and fury, wars fought not with swords but with the orange leather of a basketball. And when a man like Magic, known for his radiant smile and charisma, admits to hatred, it carries the weight of an empire remembering its most bitter enemies. Hatred, for him, was not a matter of personal malice. It was a furnace that forged his will, a necessary fire to survive the brutal theater of the NBA. And in the long tapestry of his career, there were 5 men who stood above all others, players whose very existence forced him to sharpen his blade, to protect his crown, and to reveal the steel beneath the charm. These are the 5 men Magic Johnson hated most. Number 1. Larry Bird. The story of Magic Johnson cannot be told without Larry Bird, and the story of Larry Bird cannot be told without Magic Johnson. Together they reshaped the very fabric of the NBA, dragging it from the shadows of decline into the golden light of mainstream glory. But before they were professional gladiators, they were already adversaries on the battlefield of college basketball. The year was 1979, and the NCAA championship became the most watched college basketball game of all time, as Magic's Michigan State Spartans met Bird's Indiana State Sycamores. Magic triumphed that day, but he walked off the court knowing that his greatest rival had been born. In the NBA, their rivalry became legend. Magic's Showtime Lakers, built on speed, flair, and rhythm, clashed with Bird's Boston Celtics, the embodiment of grit, toughness, and ruthless execution. Magic has often spoken about how much he hated losing to Bird, how Bird's cold, unflinching demeanor could slice through the bright lights of Los Angeles. In interviews years later, he confessed that Bird was the one man who could truly get under his skin, the one opponent he despised facing the most. It wasn't just because Bird was great, but because Bird was relentless. He had no fear, no hesitation, no weakness to exploit. Every pass Magic threw, Bird seemed to counter. Every victory felt incomplete if Bird still lingered as a threat. Hatred was the natural response to such an immovable obstacle, a rival who mirrored his own greatness but stripped away the joy with which Magic played. Number 2. Isiah Thomas. If Bird was the noble rival, Isiah Thomas was the thorn that dug into Magic's heart. They began as friends, brothers bound by a shared love of the game. Their embrace before battles was famous, 2 warriors showing warmth before the storm. But friendship, in the crucible of competition, is fragile. And as the Detroit Pistons rose in power, as the bad boys carved their legacy of bruises and defiance, the bond between Magic and Isiah splintered into venom. Magic has admitted in interviews that facing Isiah brought out a deep sense of conflict. He hated losing to him not just because of competition, but because every loss felt like betrayal. On the court, Isiah was merciless, orchestrating chaos with a cunning smile. He embodied the bad boy's philosophy, willing to claw, scratch, and sacrifice his own body to dismantle Magic's Showtime empire. The Pistons were built to torment the Lakers, to beat Magic down with physicality and psychological warfare. Their relationship disintegrated during the finals, when whispers of rivalry turned into open wounds. By 1991, when rumors and tensions reached their peak, Magic spoke with bitterness about the collapse of their friendship. He hated Isiah not only for the bruises on the hardwood, but for the fracture of trust off it. Here was a man he had once called brother, now transformed into an enemy cloaked in betrayal. For Magic, the sting of Isiah's shadow lingered long after the final buzzer, a hatred that carried the sorrow of lost kinship. Number 3. Michael Jordan. By the late 1980s, a storm was rising in Chicago. Michael Jordan, the young assassin with gravity-defying leaps, was beginning his ascent. For Magic, who had ruled the NBA alongside Bird, Jordan was not simply another challenger. He was destiny itself, the heir to the throne who would not ask for the crown, but seize it. Magic has spoken with honesty about how much he hated facing Jordan in those early years. It wasn't because Jordan was yet unbeatable, but because his hunger was frightening. Every time Magic stared across the court at Jordan, he could see the future rushing toward him. Jordan was younger, faster, meaner. He embodied a new era, one where the glamour of Showtime would give way to a single man's ferocious will. Their clash in the 1991 NBA Finals was the final act of Magic's dynasty, a passing of the torch carved not in ceremony but in pain. The Lakers fell, and Jordan ascended. Magic later confessed that losing to Jordan hurt differently. Bird had been a rival of equals, Isiah a fallen friend. But Jordan was inevitability, a force of nature that could not be contained. To hate him was to hate the reality of time, to rage against the dying of one's own era. Magic hated Jordan for taking away the kingdom he had built, for showing him that even kings must bow to the next conqueror. Number 4. Kevin McHale. While Bird was the face of Boston, Kevin McHale was the dagger in its hand. For Magic Johnson, McHale was a tormentor of a different breed. Tall, long, and endlessly skilled in the post, McHale represented the bruising interior battles that clashed with Showtime's elegance. Magic has often remarked on the physicality of those Celtics teams, and McHale was their executioner. Every time Magic drove into the lane, McHale's arms seemed to appear like iron gates. His defense was suffocating, his scoring unyielding. If Bird was the brain of the Celtics, McHale was the muscle. For Magic, the hatred here was born not of personal rivalry, but of constant, grinding frustration. McHale was the wall that would not break, the giant whose very presence demanded Magic find another way. In the finals of the 1980s, McHale's shadow loomed large. When Magic remembers Boston, he does not only remember Bird. He remembers the pain of McHale's elbows, the impossibility of stopping his post moves, the relentless bruises he delivered without ever losing composure. McHale was the kind of player Magic hated not because of theatrics, but because he forced suffering upon every possession. Number 5. Bill Laimbeer. If hatred could take human form, for Magic Johnson it often wore the face of Bill Laimbeer. Among the bad boys of Detroit, Laimbeer was the villain who relished his role, the man who turned basketball into warfare. He was not the most skilled, nor the most graceful, but he was ruthless, unapologetic, and cruel. Magic's Lakers embodied beauty and speed, but Laimbeer represented ugliness and brutality. Magic despised Laimbeer because every encounter with him felt less like sport and more like survival. Laimbeer was willing to foul, to shove, to taunt, to break the rules of grace in pursuit of victory. He turned games into street fights, and he did so with a smirk. For Magic, who carried himself as an ambassador of the game, Laimbeer was everything he stood against. And yet, he could not ignore him, for Laimbeer's presence was central to Detroit's dominance.